It was raining just enough to blur the lines between things, the kind of rain that doesn't drench you all at once, but slowly seeps in, quiet and persistent. I was waiting for the bus, coat zipped up, hands in my pockets, thoughts far from anything useful. That was when I heard her voice, soft, barely above the sound of water on concrete. "Men never look at me," she murmured. It wasn't said to anyone in particular. She was staring ahead, not at me, not at the street, just away. A woman in a faded grey sweater, hood half up, hugging herself like she was trying to hold something inside. I recognized the tone, not pity, not complaint, just fact, worn from being repeated too often, maybe even in silence. I didn't mean to say anything, but I did. "Then look at me now." She turned, slowly. Her eyes weren't searching for kindness or challenge, just proof that I was real. For a second she held my gaze, then she blinked, almost startled, and looked away again. "I didn't mean you had to." "I know," I said, "but I wanted to." Silence. The rain kept tapping at the roof of the shelter. She shifted her weight, uncomfortable. I didn't move. I've learned that sometimes presence is louder than words. "I'm sorry," she said after a while, rubbing her arm like she could erase what she'd said. "That was a stupid thing to say." "It wasn't stupid," I replied. "It was honest." She smiled, faintly, more with her eyes than her mouth. "You always talk to strangers in the rain." "Only when they say something true." That made her laugh. Just a little. She looked down at her shoes. One of the laces was untied. I wanted to kneel and tie it for her, but I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I just stood there, letting her decide what came next. "Grace," she said quietly, like the name was something fragile. "Daniel," I replied. The bus arrived. We both hesitated, then boarded. She sat near the window. I sat across the aisle, not too close, not too far. We didn't talk during the ride. I didn't need to. Something had shifted already. When my stop came, I stood up, paused. "Same time tomorrow?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. Then, still looking out the window, she nodded once. And just like that, the night opened up a little. Not wide, just enough. 3 days passed. I didn't see her at the bus stop. Rain came and went. So did people. I didn't ask myself why I noticed her absence. I already knew. There are silences that settle differently when someone has made even the smallest dent in your routine. She had. It was a Sunday morning when I saw her again. I had gone to my usual cafe, small, quiet, attached to a used bookstore. I liked the way the place smelled. Paper, cinnamon, old wood. I sat at my corner table, nursing a lukewarm coffee, when she walked in, not seeing me at first. She looked tired, not the kind of tired that sleep fixes, but the kind that builds from holding yourself up too long. She ordered tea, then turned and scanning the room. Her eyes passed over me, paused, then blinked with something like confusion or relief. She walked over slowly. "How you again?" she said, not smiling but not unhappy either. "Me?" I nodded. "Didn't think I'd see you here." She glanced around, clutching her tea with both hands. "It's my hideout, one of them." "Solid choice," I said. "Best scones in the district." She sat across from me without asking. It didn't feel forward. It felt necessary, like we were picking up a thread neither of us had meant to start. We sat in silence for a minute. Then she reached for the sugar and, in doing so, her sleeve caught the edge of her cup. Tea spilled across the table, racing toward the edge. "Damn it," she whispered, grabbing napkins. I stood and helped, mopping up the mess with calm, practiced motions. I didn't speak. Neither did she. When it was cleaned up, she looked at me with that tight, embarrassed expression people wear when they're afraid of being too much. "I do that kind of thing all the time," she muttered. "Clumsy, distracted. My mom used to say I take up too much space." "You don't," I said. "Not here." She didn't respond to that, just stared at her hands like they might betray her again. I watched her carefully, not for drama, not for rescue, just to see her, fully. That was the thing. Most people don't really look. They glance, they assess, but they don't stay with the moment. "Are you always this calm?" she asked. "I don't see the point in rushing through things," I said. "Especially people." That made her pause. She tilted her head. You're strange. I get that a lot. She took a sip of what little tea remained. I used to come here with someone. Before, he hated when I talked too much. Then I hope you talk as much as you want now. Another pause, another long look. The air between us wasn't heavy. It was just real. There's a difference. I might come back next Sunday, she said softly. I'll be here, I replied. She nodded, as if she had expected the answer, but still needed to hear it out loud. Then she stood, gathered her things, and left. No goodbye, just presence, then absence. But something had stayed. Something always does. I went back the next Sunday, earlier than usual. I told myself it was habit, that I liked the cafe, the quiet, but I chose a table near the window where I could see the door, and I didn't open my book. Instead, I watched the street, the slow trickle of people, and the way morning light stretched across the floor like it had nowhere urgent to be. She didn't come. I waited an hour past the point of reason, then I left, bought groceries I didn't need, and thought about her the rest of the day. Not obsessively, just in the way you think about a puzzle that almost made sense. The following week, I passed a small shop on my way home from work. It sold plants, mostly the kind people forget to water, but near the door I saw a single row of miniature sunflowers in ceramic pots, bright, stubborn things, completely out of season. I walked in and bought one without thinking. The next morning I stopped by the cafe early and asked the girl behind the counter if she knew a woman named Grace, described her. She nodded vaguely. Comes in sometimes. Always sits at that back table, carried by the bookshelf. I asked if I could leave something there. She shrugged. If it's not weird. It's not, I said. I left the sunflower in the middle of the table with no note, no name, nothing that would tie it back to me. It wasn't about being seen. It was about letting her know someone had. I came back 3 days later. The pot was gone. I didn't see her until the end of that week, a Thursday. I was walking out of the bookstore next door, and she was there standing outside the cafe with a paper cup, holding it close like it warmed more than her hands. She spotted me before I could pretend not to notice her. You left it, she said, not asking. I nodded. And why? Because it looked like you needed something that didn't ask anything back. She looked at me for a long time. Not the kind of look that weighs or judges, but the kind that tries to understand if kindness has an expiration date. I thought maybe it was a mistake, that someone meant it for someone else. It wasn't. I don't really like flowers, she said. They die fast. Then maybe that's what makes them worth something. Her fingers tightened around the cup. She looked away, then back. I kept it. I hoped you would. Another pause. She had a habit of pausing, not to fill space, but to test it, to see if it held. I haven't been avoiding you, she said quietly. I just don't know how to be seen without flinching. I'm not trying to fix anything, I said, just standing still in case you need the quiet. A soft exhale. She stepped closer, just slightly. We stood there, not touching, not even close enough for that. But it felt like something had moved. I'll sit with you next time, she said. Inside. I'd like that. Then she walked away, sunflower still in her voice. She came the following Sunday, just like she said. This time, she didn't hover by the entrance or wait for some unspoken permission. She walked straight to my table, sat down across from me, and placed her hands flat on the wood like she needed to ground herself. We didn't talk at first. I didn't ask questions. I just sipped my coffee while she stirred her tea long after the sugar had dissolved. She was wearing the same grey sweater, sleeves pulled over her wrists, and there were shadows beneath her eyes that hadn't been there before. You ever feel like your body walks into a room 10 minutes before you do? She asked suddenly, not looking at me. Like, people already decided what you are, before you even say hello. I didn't rush to answer. She didn't need comfort, just space to say it out loud. All the time, I said, people see what they want to see, or what they're afraid to. She glanced up. There was something cautious in her gaze, like a child checking if the floor is safe before stepping forward. I used to believe I was the exception, like maybe if I worked harder, smiled more, stayed quiet, shrunk myself, maybe then they'd look past it. Did they? No, she laughed, dry and small. I dated someone once who used to order my food for me. Said I'd feel less embarrassed if I didn't have to say it out loud. I didn't flinch. I kept my eyes steady. He said people stared when I ate, that they judged me. So I started skipping meals when we went out. Told him I wasn't hungry. Came home and ate in the dark like some secret animal. She paused. Her fingers were trembling slightly. She noticed, clenched them into fists. He left, eventually. Said I was too sensitive, that I made everything harder than it needed to be. I didn't tell her he was wrong. She already knew. I don't tell people that, she said after a moment. It's not the kind of thing that makes for polite company. I'm not here for polite, I said. I'm here for the truth, however it sounds. She looked at me again, really looked, like she was trying to figure out what I got out of this, what I wanted from her. I held her gaze without asking for anything. You're strange, she said. Not for the first time. I prefer consistent. She smiled, briefly. Why do you keep showing up? Because I said I would. That simple. That simple? She leaned back in her chair, eyes narrowed in thought, then softer. I don't know what to do with that. You don't have to do anything. I'm not a test. Silence again. But it felt different now. Less like a wall. More like a breath being held between two people who didn't know what to name this thing forming between them. When we stood to leave, she walked beside me without hesitation. No distance. No sidelong glances. Just quiet steps on pavement and the sense that maybe, for the first time in a long while, she wasn't alone in the world. It had been raining again. Not the kind that begged for umbrellas, but the soft, drizzling kind that made everything quieter. I was walking past the park near my apartment when I saw the trees dripping, the gravel paths glistening like they'd been polished by stillness. I thought of Grace. Not because of anything she'd said, but because the quiet reminded me of her. That evening, I sent a message. Not a question, not a plea, just a simple line. I'm taking a walk tomorrow morning. If you feel like joining. She didn't answer right away. She never did. But the next morning, I saw her at the entrance of the park, standing with her hands in her coat pockets, eyes scanning the space like it might change shape if she looked too long. When she noticed me, she gave a nod, no smile, no grand gesture, just that small tilt of acknowledgement that said, I'm here. I chose this. We started walking, side by side. I didn't try to make conversation, and she didn't seem to expect any. The gravel crunched beneath our feet in slow, deliberate rhythm. A pair of joggers passed us. She flinched slightly, not visibly, but I felt the tension in her steps. I slowed my pace without saying anything. She matched it. After a while, she spoke. When I was a kid, I used to imagine what it'd be like to disappear. I didn't respond. Some sentences are doors. You wait to see if the person wants to walk through. Not in a dramatic way, she added. Just to not be seen, to not have to brace for people's eyes. I thought maybe if I got quiet enough, small enough, they'd forget I was there. And I could just exist, without having to apologize for it. We stopped near a bench. She didn't sit. Neither did I. But being invisible turns you into something you're not. And eventually, even you forget who you were before you started shrinking. I see you, I said, calmly. I don't mean that like a line. I mean it as a fact. She turned her head slightly. Her eyes searched my face, not looking for charm or admiration, just verification. You're hard to read, she said. I'm not here to be solved. That earned the faintest lift at the corner of her mouth. Not a smile, just the ghost of one. I've been thinking about trying a new thing, she said, voice low. Letting someone walk next to me without feeling like I have to earn it. You don't, I said. You just have to be willing. She nodded slowly. That scares me more than being alone. I know. We resumed walking. The path curved toward a small clearing with benches and a view of the city through the trees. We stopped there, and for the first time since she arrived, she sat. This is the first time in weeks I've sat in a public place without pretending to check my phone, she whispered. Then maybe this is the first time in weeks you were allowed to just sit. She glanced at me, eyes steady. Why do you say things like that? Like they're simple truths. Because they are. She exhaled, long, measured, as if something inside her had been holding its breath for too long. We didn't say much after that. Just shared the bench, the morning air, and the quiet certainty that something was slowly changing. Not because either of us forced it, but because neither of us ran from it. It was nearly evening when she called. Her voice was steady, but something in it flickered like a candle struggling against wind. "Do you still go to that bench?" "I do," I said. "Every few days. Will you be there tonight?" "Yes. I think I'd like to sit there." It wasn't a plan. It was permission. And it was enough. I arrived early, just as the last light bled out of the sky. The city hummed softly in the background, distant and indifferent. The bench stood beneath a crooked tree that shed its leaves too early every year. I sat down, not checking the time, not looking at my phone. When she appeared, it was like she had always been walking toward this moment. Grace sat beside me without a word. Her breathing was a little uneven. She didn't look at me. Her hands were clasped tight in her lap, as if she were holding something fragile she wasn't sure she should open. "I don't always know how to be around people who don't need me to perform," she said. "You don't have to be anything here," I replied. She stared ahead, into the darkness gathering beneath the trees. There was no one else in the park, just us and the quiet rustle of dry leaves against pavement. "I saw my cousin last week," she said. "We used to be close, but she always had this way of speaking to me like I was a project, like my body was some before photo in a transformation story she could someday post about." "Did you tell her how that felt?" "No, I smiled. I made jokes. I pretended it didn't matter. Then I went home and didn't speak to anyone for 2 days. She pulled her sweater tighter around her. Her shoulders were tense, like she hadn't exhaled in weeks. "I've started to believe," and she said, "that maybe some people are just meant to be the friend, the support, the listener, the one who makes space for others but never gets chosen first." "You weren't made to orbit someone else," I said. "You're not the background." She was quiet then. "You make it sound so obvious." "It is," I said, "from where I'm sitting." She turned her head then, not fully, but enough that I could see her profile in the soft spill of a nearby street lamp. "You always look at me like I'm not failing." "Because you're not," she swallowed. "But I'm scared all the time." "I know. I feel like any minute I could ruin everything." "You haven't ruined anything. I want to trust that. I'll be here while you do." Her breath caught, not dramatically, just enough to break the rhythm of her silence. And then she let out a small, almost reluctant laugh. "You say things that stay in my head for days," she murmured. "I don't say anything I don't mean." We sat like that, in the kind of silence that doesn't press or demand. She leaned back slowly, letting the bench take her weight. Our shoulders didn't touch, but the space between us felt warm, lived in. After a long time, she whispered, "Thank you." "For what?" "For not needing me to be someone I'm not." The wind picked up. The night deepened. But we didn't move. We just stayed, side by side, as if stillness itself could be a kind of answer. I found her sitting on the steps outside the community center one afternoon, her eyes fixed on the ground, like it had told her something she couldn't quite believe. She wasn't expecting me. I hadn't said I'd be there. But when she looked up and saw me, she didn't flinch. She just shifted slightly, making space beside her. I sat down. The sun was low, casting long shadows over the pavement. "I used to paint," she said, before I even asked how she was. I waited. "I stopped after my last show," she continued. "Only a few pieces. Nothing grand. Mostly small things. Faces, I imagined. Places I dreamed about but had never been. I submitted them to this local gallery event. One of those things where they say it's not about competition, but you still feel like you're being measured." Her voice had a distant edge to it. Not numb, just worn down. "They hung one of my canvases near the entrance. I thought it meant something. But I overheard 2 women talking about it, laughing, saying it looked like a child's therapy session. One of them said it was brave. But in that way, people say when they don't actually mean brave, they mean sad or pitiable." I didn't say anything. Her story wasn't over. "I went home and packed up every brush, every tube of paint. Haven't opened the box since." She glanced at me. "I still have one empty frame hanging on my wall. I left it there to remind myself that maybe one day I'd fill it again. But the longer it stays empty, the more it feels like proof I won't." "Do you miss it?" I asked. "I don't know." She looked back down at her hands. "I miss the part of me that believed it was worth doing." The street was quiet. A dog barked in the distance, then silence again. "Would you show me your paintings?" I asked. She blinked. "They're not good." "That's not what I asked." She gave a soft laugh, almost without sound. "You're relentless." "No," I said. "Just patient." She looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. "Maybe." We sat there until the sun began to slip behind the buildings. The warmth faded, but neither of us moved. "I want to try again," she said suddenly. "Not to prove anything. Just to feel like I can still create something that doesn't ask for approval. That's the best reason to do it." She turned to me. "And if it's terrible, then I'll sit beside you anyway." Her eyes didn't water, but I saw something shift, like a lock clicking open inside her chest. A breath released that had been held too long. "You make things feel possible," she whispered. "No," I said. "You're the one doing that. I'm just not walking away from it." The sky had turned a soft blue-gray by the time we stood. She didn't rush. She didn't apologize for anything she'd said. And when we parted ways, she said goodbye with something like light in her voice. It sounded like a beginning. It was Grace who suggested it, not casually, but not reluctantly either. We were walking after a quiet afternoon coffee, and she said, almost as if testing the air, "My sister's having a small lunch thing on Sunday. Backyard, just a few people. Nothing dramatic." I waited. She invited me. "I wasn't going to go," she added. "But, I don't know. Would you come with me?" There was no hesitation in me. Just a simple yes. Sunday came with early warmth, the kind of day that felt borrowed from late spring. We arrived together, and I could tell the moment we crossed the gate into her sister's backyard that Grace wanted to disappear. Not because anyone was unkind, just the opposite. Too many warm smiles, too many glances that lingered, assessing, interpreting, praising her presence a little too loudly. I stayed close one, but not possessive. She didn't need a shield. She needed a witness. Her sister was welcoming, polite in that slightly strained way of people trying too hard to make a guest feel comfortable. The food was laid out on mismatched dishes. Laughter floated from one corner to the other, and there was a golden retriever wandering between legs in search of dropped crumbs. We sat under a tree near the fence, a little removed. Grace balanced a paper plate on her knees, picking at a piece of roasted chicken. "She means well," she murmured, nodding toward her sister. "But every time she says it's just so good to see you out, I feel like I'm being congratulated for not hiding." "You're not here to earn praise," I said. "You're here because you wanted to be." Her eyes flicked to me. "Did I?" "You're here," I said. "That's enough." She smiled, small and genuine, and took a bite of the chicken. Later, someone brought out a photo album. I saw Grace tense before it was even opened. Childhood pictures, family holidays, birthdays, all the memories captured in frames that never quite fit her. She watched from our spot by the tree, not moving to join the circle. "There's a photo of me in there, from the year I broke my ankle," she said. "They made me sit on a stool while everyone else stood. My face looks like I was already apologizing for being in the frame." "Do you want to leave?" I asked. She shook her head. "No, I just don't want to shrink." "Then don't." She was quiet. Then, slowly, she reached over and placed her hand on mine, not grasping, not asking, just touching, like a flag planted gently into unfamiliar ground. "You know," she said, "if this were any other day, I'd be hiding in the bathroom by now." "Then it's not any other day." "No," she said. "It's not." When we left, her sister hugged her too tightly, whispered something I didn't catch. Grace just nodded, kept walking. In the car, she rolled down the window and let the wind undo the tension in her jaw. "Thank you," she said, looking out. "For what?" "For not making it a big deal." "It wasn't a big deal," I said. "It was a step." She turned her face toward me, wind sweeping her hair back, and for the first time I saw her fully at ease, not because she'd become someone else, but because, just maybe, she was beginning to believe she didn't have to. She told me about the job on a Tuesday. We were walking back from the market, her arms full of groceries and soft distractions, when she said it like it was a passing thought. "There's an offer," she murmured. "Out of town. Different city. A library position. Better hours, more pay. It's a good thing." I didn't stop walking. She didn't want drama. She wanted clarity. "How far?" I asked. 3 hours. Not far enough to feel like a new country. Far enough that it changes everything. She wasn't looking at me when she said it. Her voice was too casual, like she was rehearsing a version of the story that wouldn't reveal how much she cared. "I haven't said yes," she added. "They're waiting on my answer." We reached her building and climbed the stairs in quiet. Inside, she unpacked the bags, one item at a time, slow and deliberate. I watched her line up jars in the cabinet, as if their order might make the choice simpler. "It's not about running," she said. "I've wanted a reset for a long time. A job like this doesn't land in your lap twice." "Do you want it?" I asked. "I don't know," she said. "That's the problem. I don't know what part of me is afraid of staying, and what part is afraid of going." I didn't answer right away. I walked over, leaned against the kitchen counter, and let the moment breathe. "If you go," I said, "I'll help you pack. No guilt, no questions." She looked up, startled. "And if you stay," I continued, "I'll be right here, still showing up, still sitting beside you." The silence between us wasn't heavy this time. It was tender, like something sacred was being handed over. "I thought you might ask me not to go," she said. "I don't want you to stay because I asked," I said. "I want you to stay because it feels right." She nodded slowly. Her hands rested on the edge of the sink. Her reflection in the window was softer than her voice. "When you say things like that, it makes everything else feel small." I shrugged. "That's because it is." She turned toward me then, fully. "And for a long time, neither of us moved. I've never had someone choose me without conditions," she said. "You weren't waiting to be chosen," I said. "You were deciding whether you could let someone walk with you. And can I? That's never been my decision." She closed her eyes, breathed in and let it go slowly. "I need a few days," she said. "I've got time." She walked me to the door. As I stepped out, she didn't kiss me, didn't ask me to stay longer. She just placed her hand on my arm, lightly, as if grounding herself. "Whatever I choose," she said, "thank you for not making it about you. It never was." And then I left. But I didn't walk away with doubt. Some doors don't need to be slammed or locked. Some are left gently ajar, waiting to be opened from the inside. I hadn't heard from her in 3 days. Not a message, not a word. The kind of silence that feels purposeful, not absence, deliberation. I went about my days without rushing anything. I kept to my rhythm, work, walks, coffee alone. But there was a quiet part of me, untouched and alert, that held space for her answer, not with urgency, but with readiness. On the 4th evening, just after the sky had begun to dim into that kind of purple that only exists for 10 minutes a day, she knocked on my door. No call, no warning. I opened it, and there she was. No suitcase, no visible resolve, just Grace, in the clothes I'd seen her wear a dozen times, with her hair tied back and her eyes tired but steady. "I'm not going," she said. I stepped aside. She didn't move. "I wanted to want it," she said. "The job, the change, the fresh start." But I kept picturing myself there, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't see it. Not because it was wrong, but because it wasn't mine. I nodded once. No questions, no confirmation needed. "I told them this morning," she continued. "Said thank you, said no, and then I walked for hours." She looked up at me, the kind of look that doesn't ask for permission. "It offers something. I don't know where this goes," she said. "I don't know what we are. But I knew I didn't want to start a life somewhere else while wondering what could have happened if I stayed." "You didn't have to choose me," I said quietly. "I didn't," she replied. "I chose myself. And then I came here." That was when I stepped back, letting her in. She passed me with no hesitation this time, like the threshold was no longer a test. We sat on the floor, no music, no lights except the one by the window. She tucked her legs beneath her and exhaled like she'd been carrying weight that didn't belong to her. "I kept the sunflower," she said. "It's still alive." "Stubborn thing," I said. "Yeah, like me." There was no declaration, no grand kiss. Just a moment where she turned toward me, looked straight into me, and held her gaze like she had found something solid. And in that silence, I saw it. Recognition, not of a perfect ending, not of a solved life, but of a place to rest. She didn't say, "I'm staying." She didn't need to. The look she gave me stayed long after she'd left that night, long after the door closed. It stayed in the room, in the walls, in the rhythm of my breath. And I knew, without question, without fear, that something real had begun, quietly, completely,